Commit to Wealth Nation, welcome to the Commit to Wealth podcast. I am your host, Juan Vargas. Today on the show, we have Greg Dickerson. Greg is a serial entrepreneur with over 20 years of experience as a real estate investor and developer and over 200 million in real estate transactions, including the construction and renovation of custom homes and commercial properties, mixed-use buildings, and multifamily assets. Greg, welcome to the show.
Hey, Juan. Thank you. It's great to be here.
Yeah. Hey, Greg, it's awesome. We actually had a phone call a couple of days ago. And so you told me your, kind of your background, and boy, you have a background for sure. You've been in it all for sure. So I'm going to let you tell your story, but you have a lot of experience. So let's get going with that. Tell us where you're calling us first of all, and then also tell us, what your experience has been like and what your focus is, these days.
Yeah. So I started, 21 years ago now, as a small remodeling contractor. I've done two things in my life. It's restaurants and construction. I went in the Navy right out of high school, so I didn't go to college. And I worked in restaurants and worked construction before I went in the military, all through school. Natural born entrepreneur when I was a kid, cutting grass, raking leaves, whatever I could do to earn money. And, so when I got out of the Navy, I worked a few different jobs, traveled around a little bit. Mm-hmm. And in 1997, I moved to the Outer Banks of North Carolina, and I started a little remodeling company. And it was just me and my truck and my tools, and we did about $250,000 our first year in small remodeling projects. And I built that into a $30 million company in about 7 years and sold it off in 04, 05, kind of the peak of the market. And along the way, I learned how to invest in and develop real estate. So I'd owned a couple of houses before I started that business and started doing the remodeling thing. And that's how I got in the business. I was trying to get an addition built on my house and nobody would call me back. So I said, well, there must be a niche and a need here if contractors can't return a phone call. So that was back in 1997, 98, pre-boom. And so I started working for some guys that were flipping properties. They were renovating resort beach houses and adding pools and ground floors and things like that and flipping them. So I started working for those guys and kind of learning from them. And then I partnered up with a developer who was a friend of mine, and he taught me how to build spec houses and how to develop land. So we started doing some projects together. And before that, I'd never built a house from the ground up, so I just learned it all from the ground up the hard way through doing deals with people. And then as far as self-development, self-education, I read everything I could, starting with Rich Dad, Poor Dad, kind of like everybody, right? Mm-hmm. And I really took that to heart. So I built 12 different companies along the way over my 20-year career. And what those companies would do is they would provide me with passive income, passive cash flow, just like an apartment building, to use to invest in bigger projects and bigger deals. So my construction company was my main business. That was my main cash flow. But I also had about 12 other businesses that I developed along the way, mostly ancillary to the construction industry, pools and spas and landscaping, plumbing company, hurricane shutter company, electrical company, painting company, things like that. Right. I had a couple of restaurants, and then I had a pool. I had a cheerleading, gymnastics, trampoline school that I built up with somebody, and that turned into a really nice real estate deal like we were talking about. I built a building for them to go into after I bought the program and took it nonprofit and gave it back to them. I had leased a 10,000 square foot space and built it out and put them in there. The board that I installed of the nonprofit didn't want to take on the expense of a 16,000 square foot multi-million-dollar building. They wanted to stay where they were and just pay rent. So I ended up selling that building to a Harley Davidson dealer and built it out for him and made back everything that I donated to that nonprofit 2 times. So cool.
That's a crazy story. And I know that, we kind of briefly discussed about that, but I mean, you had the right intent, in trying to, give them the building, but then, they didn't want it. And you ended up being better, I guess for you in the long term, as far as, financially for sure. So yeah, that's a crazy story. That really is, the Harley Davidson story for sure. So yeah, you've been doing all kinds of projects. Why not, focus maybe on 1 or 2 projects, or niches, I should say, and just kind of go to town with those and, perfect them and just make those monsters. Why kind of different things? Is it just because you're just good at, building businesses? Or is it just because you're curious at doing different things? What is it? What is it exactly?
Well, I love to help people. So I did focus on the building company, and that did take, 7 years of focus. That was my main business. That's what I did. but I'm a leader, delegator, motivator. I'm a coach and a mentor. And I had a pretty sophisticated company. I mean, we had 20 employees. So I had a president, a vice president, CFO, office administration, and then I had 12 people in the field, project managers and all that. So I didn't actually, I didn't actually do anything, from day to day. When my company was doing $30 million, when we were our busiest, I had the least to do every day, and I made the most money. And it's because I put systems in place. I developed my people. I hired professionals, and I let them do their job. So when you're growing and scaling an operation, that's what you do. You find people and you put them in the right position, and you coach them to success. You find champions and you coach them to success. You put aces in places, and you lead, you delegate, and you motivate. And one of my gifts, my superpowers, is I'm a great delegator. And I love to find people that are better and smarter than me and coach them to success and let them do their thing. Like I said, I'd never built a house from the ground up in my entire life when I started building houses. So how did I do that? Well, I went to some of the top building companies, some of my top competitors, and I hired some of their best people, brought them on board, put them to work with me, and we built that company, really quick. So that's how we did it. So along the way, people saw that I was successful. They saw what we were doing. I had a good reputation. I was involved in a lot of things in the community. It was a small community, the Outer Banks of North Carolina, a little resort town off the coast of North Carolina. So people would see what I was doing, and they would just come to me. And like one guy was selling me pools and spas, and he said, "Hey, I've always wanted my own company. You're buying a ton of these things. Why don't I come to work for you? We'll create this company. You can get these things at a wholesale cost, and I'll have a business, and we'll do this thing." So we created a name and a logo, and set up the corporation, and we went partners 50-50. I put up all the money. I put him in a position to be able to do the work, and he did everything day to day. I just coached him. I just handled the administrative part initially until we could afford a bookkeeper for his company. And I just let him do his thing. I mean, he was an expert at pools and spas. He just didn't have the money to get started, and he didn't know how to start a business. And I'm one of those guys that can parachute into almost anywhere in the world and start a business, just from scratch. I'll figure something out and I'll get it up and running. So that's the way it happened. People would usually approach me that had a situation or a problem or a dream, and I'm just a sucker for helping people and watching people succeed and achieve their dreams. So I would just come alongside them, partner with them, and help them do it. And I do the same thing in real estate deals. I've partnered with people in real estate deals and helped them get going. And I work with some of the top investors and syndicators out there right now, helping them grow and scale their business. And that's what really fills me and excites me more than anything else, is taking somebody and helping them unlock their untapped potential and reach their God-given, full God-given potential and talents that they were put on this earth to do. That's what I really love doing, is just coaching and helping people. And I've done it in my business for 21 years and 12 other businesses. So that's kind of how it happened.
Gotcha. So it was just people just reaching out to you, and you had the ability to help them out, both from a business standpoint and financially. And they were the ones that actually taking over the business. You oversaw what they did, and you guys grew together. That's in a nutshell. That's kind of the way it was. So what you're saying is somebody can actually today, and I'm not trying to I guess make this like a pitch fest or anything like that, but somebody can actually reach out to you today, and they have a business idea, no matter where they're calling from, and you can potentially help them out.
Absolutely. Okay. Yeah, I can help them get a business off the ground. I can show them and tell them exactly how to do it. I can help them grow and scale it, whatever it is they need to do. And yeah, I mean, that's and I've done it. I'm doing it right now. I've done it my whole career. And it's just, it's just what I enjoy doing. I enjoy building businesses. I enjoy building projects and properties and companies. I'm a builder. That's what I've been my whole career. And it can be people, it can be a company, or it can be a project. And that's just what I've always done.
Gotcha. So what does it take for somebody what are some things that somebody must have before they reach out to you and trying to get something going, like, because this is more of a partnership. It's you're mentoring them, but it's more of a partnership. So, partnerships are tricky. You want to work with the right people. So what are some characteristics that you look for in a person, but more importantly, what do they have to have from a business standpoint, like as far as plans, to get something going with you? What would win somebody over?
Yeah, well, so it depends on what it is. So if it's somebody who's already in business, then it's just a matter of knowing what they want to do with the business and where they want to go. So if they want to scale their business and really grow it fast and take advantage of the market right now, that's one option. So they need to have some experience and already have some momentum going if they want to really ramp it up really quickly. And they need to know the business that they're going to go into. So that's the number one thing, is they need to know what it is they want to do, which is really the hardest thing for people to do, is figure out what it is they want to do. Once they figure that out, then they need to know what they're doing. So I'm not going to come in and teach somebody how to be something I don't know how to do. But if they're good at what they do, they're experts at what they do, then I can help them with the rest. The business side of it's not that hard in terms of the marketing and scaling, things like that. But the technical expertise, I can't always teach that to somebody. I can teach people how to invest in real estate, that kind of thing, but I'm not going to teach you how to be a road contractor. I don't know anything about how to do that, right? Or teach you how to be a physician or something like that. But so that's the one. If you're already operating and they already have a business, then I can take them where they are, as long as they have a desire. So they have to have a sincere desire. They got to be coachable. They got to be willing to learn, and they've got to be open to new ideas. And sometimes that's all it takes, is just that little different way of looking at things, or coming from a different perspective. All we know is what we know, and all we know is usually who we're surrounded with, and the input that we're putting into ourselves. So once they step outside of that and realize there's a whole world out there that they don't even have any clue about, and how to take something to the next level. So that's one group of individuals. Then you have the other side, which were people that didn't have a business yet, but they had an idea, or they were in a profession that they wanted to step outside of and start their own business. And with that, the biggest thing is desire. They just really have to have a desire to be successful. And, a lot of people want to start their own business. A lot of people want to be successful, want to be entrepreneurs. They want to make $1 million, right? And whenever somebody comes to me with that, I ask them, well, do you really? And they're like, well, what do you mean? I'm like, well, do you really want to be wealthy? Do you really want to be an entrepreneur and step out there and go out on your own? And, it kind of takes people by surprise. And I'm like, well, I'm asking you that question because, it requires sacrifice. It requires delayed gratification. It requires being willing to lose everything you have. Because, when you go out as an entrepreneur, it's up to you. You have to go out, you have to make it happen. And the only way you're going to do that, because it's hard, right? It's hard to be in business for yourself, and to sustain your life, and to, take care of your family, and to do the things you need to do on your own. You're the one that has to get up every single day and make it happen. There's nobody there kicking you in the pants to get out of bed and go do it and go make it happen. So you got to have a desire. You got to have that fire in your belly and that desire. And again, you got to be good at something. You got to know what it is you want to do and be good at it, or be willing to learn. So like real estate's pretty teachable. So most people can say, hey, I'm interested in real estate. I'm a professional and I want to go start a real estate business and get involved in multifamily or whatever. We can teach that. So that's teachable. You can teach people. That's very teachable and coachable, but that individual has to really be committed. They have to have a desire, and they have to be willing to do whatever it takes to be successful, morally, legally, ethically, and to make it happen. And if that's the case, then I can help you. But, if it's somebody that just kind of says, I'd kind of like to do that, but I really don't want to do what it takes to do it, they're not going to make it. You got to have that desire, no matter what it takes, to be successful in a business. Now, I'm not saying success in a business is success in life, right? So we have a full, we have all these areas of our life that you can measure success, but we're just talking about business. And to be successful in business, you got to be willing to do whatever it takes. You got to be willing to learn. You got to be coachable, and you got to know what you're doing. And if you don't have the knowledge, you got to get it.
Love it. Yeah, no, those are some very good points. You have to really want it. At the end of the day, you have to want it. Nobody's going to go out there and do it for you. Nothing is free. There's sacrifice involved. And you have to go out there and take it for yourself. That's
right.
That's really the nuts of it. You have to really want it. So if you want it, then there's people out there that can help you out, and then you can take it to the next level. So
it is. And the biggest thing that I give people, and that I've given people, and they don't even know it at first, but I give them belief, right? So you have to believe in yourself. You believe in yourself. You're confident in your abilities, especially now because you've done something, right? But when you first started out, you're probably a little scared, weren't you? When you went after that first multifamily deal, you were probably like, man, should I be doing this? Is this really, is it real? Number one, can I do this?
Yeah.
So what I do is I know. So what I put into people is that knowing and that confidence and that belief. So I believe for you until you can believe for yourself. And then I help you believe to the next level, because now that you're doing it, like for you, you get $100 million assets, under control, and you need to be at $1 billion. That's where you need to go next, because all you got to do is 10x what you're doing now, and you can do it. So what
For
happens
sure.
is I come alongside of you and I give you that belief and that confidence, and I'm there to prop you up. So you're out there just like me every day. And then all of a sudden, just like overnight, you're going to believe, right? Because a lot of people like, man, I got 300-400 million. There's, they don't believe they can hit a billion. I do, because if you're at 200 or 300 million, I can get you to a billion. You can be there. I know you can
Yeah,
do it
for
because you've
sure.
already
For
done
sure.
that.
Hmm.
And a lot of people, for some reason, they can't get over that mental hurdle by themselves. So that's really probably the biggest thing that I give people when they come to me, is that confidence and that belief and that knowing of what they can do before they ever know what they can do.
Gotcha. Gotcha. No, that's good. That's awesome. So let's talk about some of your deals that you've done. Like let's talk about, what has been the best deal that you've ever been a part of. Like the best project, the best deal, the one that you define what has been the best deal. It's either monetary wise or, you define that. What has been the best project you've been a part of?
There's a ton. Probably one of the most interesting was so I used to buy oceanfront hotels and tear them down and build houses back in their place. And I had one deal that I did that I had a guy that I partnered with, and he was the owner of the property. He'd come to me at one point after a hurricane had destroyed the hotel, and he was looking to redevelop the property. And I said, look, all we can do is tear it down and build houses, because the oceanfront lot wasn't deep enough to do like a multifamily project or anything like that. Condos, most of my multifamily experience early on was like condos, right? We didn't rent them out by, yearly. We rented them out weekly, and you sold them as condos. So, but the same type of structure, right?
Right.
And so he wanted to do that with his building. He wanted to condo it out and do, I don't know, 100 units, whatever it was. And I said, look, we can't do it. You don't have a deep enough property. You don't have the CAMA, Coastal Area Management Association rules won't allow you to do that. All we can do is houses. So he got into a deal with somebody else who convinced him that he could do it. And they ended up 2 years down the road, a couple $100,000 lost, ended up in a lawsuit with each other. It was a huge mess. So he walks in my office out of the blue, hadn't talked to the guy in 2 or 3 years. He just walks in my office and he says, all right, I'm ready to do this deal with you now. And I'm like, okay. So we picked it up, and I'd found out that he, had ended up in a lawsuit with this other guy. So I had to go settle his lawsuit. And I said, all we could do are the houses. So we were going to build oceanfront houses on one piece, and there was a piece across the street that we were going to build townhouses on. And while we were rolling through this was about 2007, 2008 timeframe. The deal was he was going to throw in the land, and I was going to go get all the money to do the construction. I was going to do all the building and get them all sold. Well, as I was going along, lining all that up, I was having a conversation with a friend of mine who was a lender. And he said, Greg, the market's kind of getting funny. He said, why don't y'all just sell the oceanfront lots, and then you'll be, you can put some money in your pocket, and then you'll be free and clear on the other side and go ahead and develop that and do the townhouses.
Hmm.
I said, you know what? That sounds like a good idea. So I went back to him. We modified the agreement. Now, at this point, all I have is a joint venture agreement with the property owner. I have no money out of pocket. I haven't done anything, just a little bit of due diligence. And we have a joint venture contract. So I go to the owner and I say, look, here's what we're going to do. We're going to sell these oceanfront lots. Then we're going to end up over here free and clear, and then we'll build these townhouses. And in that scenario, he'll make, about $1 million. I'll make about $300,000, and then we go to this other side. So we do that. The deal closes. I put $351,000 in my pocket from a joint venture agreement to develop a piece of property that we never touched, never put a nickel out, never did anything, right? It's like, how does that happen?
Right.
So we do that, and we still had the piece across the street. Well, in the interim, he goes to talk to his attorney after this deal closes, and the attorney said exactly that to him. They're like, you just paid this guy $351,000. He hasn't done anything. Now, I did settle his lawsuit. I did tear the building down and develop the property and do all that, along the way. And the bill got paid after the closing and all that. But so I did some work, and I brought the buyer. Without the buyer, there was never a deal. And
True.
I happened to find a pretty wealthy developer out of Norfolk that came down and bought the property and still owns it today. So he refused to fulfill the rest of the obligation, the rest of the agreement, and develop the property across the street. So I said, well, you can't do that. We have an agreement. He said, sue me. And he said, I already talked to my attorney, sue me. I said, okay. So I filed a lawsuit, and
Okay. So it gets deeper here, huh?
it does.
Your
Yeah. So I
story.
filed a
Okay.
lawsuit, so I'm easy to get along with. Right. So I said, look, at this point, if you don't want to work with me anymore and you think I made too much money, no problem. I said, I paid $40,000 to have the hotel tore down. You owe me half of that. Give me that half back and I'll walk away. He said, no, you've made enough money. I said, all right. So instead of paying me 20 grand and walking away, it took about 6 months to settle it. He ended up paying me 125,000 for me to walk away on the other piece.
Oh wow.
So
Yeah.
I
So
made, I don't know, 400 and so 351 plus 125, $466,000
Hmm.
on a joint venture agreement with no money out of my pocket.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's crazy. So, I mean, it just goes to show that, there's money out there. When it's not the traditional way of making money. Where you're flipping a property, or you're doing a rehab or whatever, or even developing, but it's there's money to be made out there, and you have to get a
You
little
just
creative out there.
you just never know.
You
So
just never
early on
know.
in my career, that's what I would do is I would create lands and sell it to an investor,
Hmm.
make a profit on the lot, then build them a house, or I'd build the houses and sell them. I did a couple of subdivisions. One of them was a 151 lot mixed use subdivision. And the way I found that property was my engineer. So my engineer was doing the work, civil engineer, for another developer who ended up not being able to get the money to do the project, and he couldn't pay his engineering bill. So my engineer said, "Hey, you want this project? The guy owes me money. He's willing to give you the land and give you the project in exchange for the money." And I'm like, okay. And it was like, I don't know, 20, 30 acre piece of property. I got it for free for a $20,000 engineering bill or something the guy couldn't pay. So we ended up doing the project and getting it all entitled, and then flipped it to a developer and made, I don't know, 400 or 500 grand on that. And, just, I got it for nothing. I mean, it's just, you just never know when you're out there working and doing things, and you just put the word out to people and say, hey, so that's a little tip for people that are listening. There are a lot of engineers out there, and a lot of bankers, and a lot of, architects and attorneys that know of projects that are going bad or went bad that somebody will pretty much give away just in exchange for their professional fees.
Wow. Yeah, that is a very big tip. And a lot of listeners out there, if you're in IT, if you're an engineer, whatever, you just you gotta speak up. That's what it is. You gotta speak up, and opportunities, can come, to you, versus you having to go out there and find them. On the
Yeah.
flip side of your good deal, what is the worst deal that you've been a part of, or one that did not go as planned at all? What's been the worst
Well,
one?
that would, that had a worst part too, because the situation I had to go through with the suit. But I
Hmm.
had another oceanfront hotel that I'd put under contract, and I ended up having in a lawsuit in that one where the owners, we bought the property for $4 million. It was worth about 6 or 7 at the time. And the week we were going to closing, some other developers in the area had found out that we had purchased the property, so they were calling the seller and going to the seller and saying, "Hey, we'll pay you $6 million. Just kick those guys out of the contract and don't close." So they tried to do that. We sued them, and that one took 2 years and cost a couple $100,000, but we won, hands down. You can't contract to sell a property with somebody and then not do it. Now they can't make you buy. You'll lose your earnest money and your due diligence and all that. But when you contract to sell, you have to sell. You can't just arbitrarily, unilaterally cancel a contract. So, that was probably one of the worst ones. I mean, every deal along the way has its challenges. Every business has its challenge. Um, I haven't had any, on the real estate side, they've all really ended well. And that's kind of what I do. I solve problems, I make things happen. So, from that standpoint, those have all been good. And I've had some businesses that didn't go so well. I backed some people in restaurants and they ended up, stealing from me and leaving town. So I've had that kind of thing happen. I thought I could trust these people. They were a young couple, and I backed them in a restaurant. They always wanted to have a restaurant. So I funded it, and I put them in business, and I coached them, and they had a really good season, I thought. Next thing I know, they're leaving town and hadn't paid their rent. And of course I'd guaranteed the lease and all that. So I had to go deal with all that. So I've had some business deals that didn't go so well, but pretty much all my real estate deals have all worked out well. They've all gone pretty well. I guess probably, on the real estate side, probably the worst thing that happened is I was doing some projects. I did a joint venture with some investors from another area, and they had borrowed hard money to do some flips, and they were looking for properties, and they didn't tell me that they borrowed hard money. They told me they had private money, patient capital, and as soon as we did, 5 or 6 flips with them, all of a sudden, they started feeling pressure and calling and saying, "Hey, we got to sell these properties." And I'm like, "Well, what's going on?" They said, "Well, we borrowed hard money, and we're kind of running out. We're eating up all our profits. We need to sell these things." So, I was a 50-50 partner with them. I found the properties, did all the work. They were bringing the money. They were looking for projects to invest in. And another gold nugget for the audience out there is, whenever somebody comes to you with money, make sure they really have it, and that it's patient capital, and that they're not tied to any triggers or pressure on their end. Because that's what happened. They called me up and said, "Man, we got to sell now. We got to drop these prices. We need to get the money back to our investors." And they had no clawback, but I'm an honorable guy and easy to work with. So I agreed. And I ended up selling a lot of those houses for very little profit just so they could get their money out and not end up losing money.
Wow. Well, so yeah, you really have to do your due diligence on people that you work with, that you bring on, and that you joint venture with, for sure. So um, we did speak about, some of the projects that you're working on, these days before we jumped on the call. So, why don't you kind of discuss those, tell us, what you're working on and what areas you're working on those projects, and go into detail on those.
Yeah, so I run the whole corridor. I still do things down in North Carolina on the Outer Banks and the Piedmont Triad area of Raleigh, Charlotte, Greensboro, Durham, those areas, and mostly commercial. So outside my area, it's mostly bigger deals, commercial multifamily. I've got a lot of focus on opportunity zone investments right now. A lot of people know what that is, and we can talk about that in a second. In my area, I still flip houses. My wife loves to do the design, and she likes to work on them. And so I totally outsource everything. So now I don't build anymore. I hire general contractors now to work for me. And so everything I do is outsourced. So I'm a leader, delegator, motivator, and I have teams everywhere, architects, engineers, the bankers. I've got operators in different areas that I do things with, contractors in different areas, and relationships I've built over the last 20 years, basically from the Hampton Roads area all the way up to DC. A lot of the property owners on the Outer Banks all come from that Northern Virginia area. And usually they're, business owners or they're wealthier individuals or investors and developers themselves. So I've created a lot of relationships with some very successful developers all up and down that region. So I've done deals from the Baltimore, DC area all the way down into Hampton Roads, which is where I'm from. That's the Norfolk, Virginia Beach area of the country. And that's where my whole family's from. And then of course the Outer Banks, I'm still building spec houses down there, but again, I've got builders down there that build for me, and I've got builders in this area and all these other markets that build. So right now, I've got a lot of capital looking to go into opportunity zone projects. So there's a new tax law that was created and enacted this year, especially 2019, where people that have a capital gain from anything, can be stocks, can be art, cars, any kind of capital gain that you've invested in real estate, they can take that capital gain and invest it in a project in an opportunity zone, a qualified opportunity zone fund or a project, and they can defer that capital gain, kind of like a 1031. And there's a 5-year and a 7-year step down. So after 5 years, you get a 10% step down on that gain. After 7 years, you get an additional 5%. So it could be a 15-year or a 15% step down over 7 years. And then after 10 years, anything you make on that initial investment is tax-free. So you pull it out, you get the 15% reduction in your gain, which has been deferred. And then you get, anything you make on that is tax-free. So needless to say, there's a lot of capital out there, a lot of equity capital from equity firms and venture capital firms that are looking to place capital gain money in the deals in these opportunity zones. So I'm kind of focused on that right now because 2019 is kind of the year to maximize that 7-year, 10-year hold because it expires in 2026. So this is going to be a big year for opportunity zone investing.
Gotcha. Yeah. So that makes a lot of sense. That's another reason why I have buddies, here in Houston that are, they have, 3, 5, 6, 10,000 units and more, one of my buddies has, 16,000 units, and these guys are also developing. And so it really all makes sense, to really think about the time limit that we have. Because it was a pretty much a 10-year deal, with Trump in house. So, time is ticking. So you gotta get in if you're gonna do it, and then take advantage of it while you can, because it's not gonna be there forever. So the word
exactly
says. So
now the key is they have to be. So you have to invest a lot of capital. So it's got to be either ground up, or it has to be a very heavy value add rehab. So you have to spend an equivalent amount of capital equal to the structure. So if you buy a multifamily property for $10 million and the land is $2 million, we have to put $8 million into that building, or whatever that case is.
Yeah. So you pretty much have to have the same amount that's going to cost you for the building, if it's a building that you're buying. Yeah, that makes sense. So are you doing these deep value adds, or are you doing more ground up? Which is your model on these projects?
So, I prefer the value add just because they're a little bit quicker, and a little bit, for me, they're a little bit easier and a little bit quicker to get going. So I prefer the value add, and I kind of enjoy that a little bit more than the ground up. Ground up takes a long time. It's really expensive. There's only so many apartment builders, general contractors that build apartment buildings and know what they're doing out there, and they're all busy. Construction costs are just going through the roof right now. Pretty much all the major metropolitan areas, there's cranes in the air everywhere you go. So for ground up, it's very expensive and time consuming right now. And I love to take old buildings and repurpose them. I mean, I don't know what it is. I just love to do that. And I'm in an area between, the DC, Baltimore area, Richmond, Virginia, Charlottesville, Virginia, down around Hampton Roads. We have a lot of urban centers where there's some gentrification that's really been going on the last few years, where these opportunity zones are to be able to take advantage of it. So they're going to be quicker, quicker projects to get going, to get in the pipeline. You have 31 months to deploy the capital when it gets invested in the opportunity zone fund. But I like to hit the ground running and get things going. And there's a lot of projects that have been going on around these, like the Baltimore area, the DC area, the Richmond, Virginia, right around the city center, those urban centers. So I really enjoy those types of projects.
So your business plan would be to go in there and do a deep value add, but hold on to it until you hit those time limits.
Yeah.
And
then
they're
going to be 10-year holds. Yeah.
Yeah. 10-year hold. And then you can dispose of it from there. So,
pretty much all the, go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I was going to say, anybody looking to do this, you got to make sure that the reason why you're doing this is because of the tax advantages. So you got to make sure that you hit those time limits. You can't just, get to a property just because it's in a so-called opportunity zone and try to flip out of it right away. Then you're not doing anything. You got to make sure that you hold on to it for the required time, to take advantage.
Now you can refi, some of that. So, especially if you do a heavy value add, you can refi a lot quicker than you can a traditional value add, or an easier value add type project. And ground up, you can obviously refi those as soon as they're done. Right. But we don't have the complete guidance on the seasoning requirements of that refi. So I'm not sure what that limit is. So anybody who's listening, make sure you check with your accountant. Make sure you go to the IRS website and research opportunity zone fund requirements and make sure that you're up on that, because it's not etched in stone. We don't have all the guidance. We don't have all the rulings, and they're trying to make it easy. They're trying to not put a whole lot of roadblocks in the way, because they want to encourage development. They want to encourage job growth. So that's the whole point of this. So they're trying to make it easy, right. But at the same time, they want that capital to stay in there. So one of the arguments and rulings that could be made is, through a refinance, you pull that initial capital back out, but then you can go do more projects. So I think you may see that where there's a requirement to reinvest or something, but I don't know. Right now, we just don't have the full guidance on that refi.
Yeah. And so for anybody out there that's looking to find out what area are these opportunity zones located, there's a map out there. So you can just Google it, but I'll give you the actual domain that you can go to. Is eig.org. That's eig.org. Go on there and they have the map, so you can zoom in and find like your area, your local area, and get a good idea of what how they have it structured as far as the map is concerned. So yep. Yeah, just go there. So so as far as because you are looking at these kind of deals, what is your outlook as far as how are you able to kind of find your deals, but also make sure that you're accounting for any kind of shift in any kind of market? And everybody's kind of freaking out about what's going on with the market or where we have right now. But what are you doing? Like, how are you making sure that you're being conservative in if any, on your projects?
Yeah, so it's a little different. So these, again, I want to be clear, these are not turnkey, and these are not your typical value add investments. So you can't go in and buy something and put, a $10 million building and put $1 million in it. Okay. You got to put a lot of money into these things. So the heavy value add projects and the redevelopment, repurpose mixed use type of projects, even industrial flex space, there's not a lot of competition for those assets. That's a harder thing to do. Rehabbing a building is very different than ground up. It's not as clean. Mm-hmm. So it's a different level of understanding, how to do those projects and what's required. And that's where I have a lot of expertise. And that's what I started in the business doing. is
Right.
remodeling buildings and houses, and it's what I love to do. So it's a different business, it's a different understanding, and there's a lot of things that you really need to know just before you jump in and take one on. So there's less competition there, and you can hedge your downside a little bit because you're creating the value from scratch almost. So you're almost buying a building for the value of the land, to a degree. So it's a little bit different, and you can almost set your cap rate. So a lot of these projects are very, very fat. They're very lucrative, but again, you got to really know what you're doing. You got to have a good solid plan. You got to have you got to have the right kind of capital to be able to take advantage of it and make sure that they're in for the long haul. To really be able to realize it, because you got to get it done, get it renovated, get it leased up. So it's going to take 2 or 3 years, to get that business plan set. But with the Opportunity Zone Fund capital, it has to sit minimum of 5 years. But most of them are going in for the 10-year run.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, yeah, that's a lot of good information that you gave there. So I guess it's time for our nuggets of
one
wisdom.
other thing too. So I'm doing this around urban centers where there's big demand and heavy population and job growth. So there's opportunity zones that are rural, right? And so I'm not going to go out in the middle of nowhere and build something and think they're going to come. I'm not going to get some plant that shut down out in the middle of 20 miles, 30 miles outside of town and try to turn that thing into some sort of a loft condo project or something, right? So it's definitely not this build it and they will come kind of thing. I'm going where the demand already is. I'm just trying to find the stuff that nobody else wants because it's too difficult. They just don't know how to mess with it.
It's too deep. Yeah. I mean, most of the people out there are looking for something that's already built that just needs a little bit of a cleaning up. It's already operating, pretty efficiently, and you're just improving it one way or another. So
Right.
most people, at least I would say most of my listeners, are not looking for deep, value add deals where you pretty much said it. You can set your own cap. Which is kind of crazy, and there's a lot of room, and there's room for some mistakes that you could possibly make, but there's a lot of margin there. So, Greg, I think it's time for our nuggets of wealth, and these are questions that I ask every guest every week, and hopefully they can get a little bit of value from these. So, what is a good tool, source, or platform that you use almost every day that can also help others?
Just technology in general. I mean, I don't have any specific tool or platform I use every day per se, but I do 90% of my business on an iPhone. So I leverage the cloud, right? Anything that I can use in terms of outsourcing or cloud-based applications I use. So I use Office 365 to keep my calendar and keep all my documents organized. I keep redundant backups in I've got a Mac and iPhone, so I keep things in, iCloud. So, all my files, everything. So I do everything paperless, and I keep everything, track everything, all my emails, all my documents, all that. So just using cloud-based applications, with the type of work I do, there really isn't one platform that's kind of like the golden goose. There's some investment management platforms out there, investment management system that's really cool that will track, so for syndications, it tracks all the investor capital and distributions and project communication portal. It's got an investor portal, that kind of thing, when you're syndicating deals. And there's a couple of property search platforms out there that I use, Reonomy, of course, Loopnet. I think everybody knows Loopnet, there's not always a lot of great deals on Loopnet, but there's a lot of good information on Loopnet, and you can find some brokers and stuff and network with them. So, but just technology in general.
Yeah, I've used Reonomy as well. I mean, I found it to be pretty helpful. And Loopnet, everybody.
Well, Reonomy has a opportunity zone function now, so that's a really, really good tool.
Yeah, and for guys, that's, you have to pay for that. It's I think they have like a trial, like you can have like a free trial for like a week or whatever. But yeah, it's a monthly or annual subscription to that, but it has good information in it. So what advice would you give to syndicate? I'll say syndicators because that's what I do. But what advice would you give to those also looking to get into this business? But besides coaching, because I know we talked about that. I know that you're big on that, and so I know that my audience is also open to that. But what would you say is the biggest thing that you would give to them?
Yeah, find a mentor, but first and foremost, get educated. You got to know what you're doing. If you're going to get in the business as an operator at any level, whether you're raising capital to put into other deals or you want to syndicate your own deals, you got to know what you're doing. So you can't just go out there and expect people to hand you money if you don't know the terminology, you don't know the asset classes, you don't know the markets, you don't know the types of construction of the different asset classes. And you can syndicate more than just multifamily. I mean, you can syndicate any kind of, well, you can syndicate a
Anything,
movie, you can
anything
syndicate
out
a business, you can syndicate any kind of real estate deal.
there.
But multifamily is hot right now. It's the easiest thing to syndicate, I think, but you really need to know what you're doing. There's a lot of great resources and tools out there free that you can learn the terminology and learn the markets and get educated. Loopnet's a great place to study multifamily properties and look at offering memorandums and learn the numbers. And that's really the key. You don't know your business unless you know the numbers. So you got to learn, obviously, the terminology. Every industry has its language. Multifamily within the real estate industry has a very specific language, different than
Right.
their asset classes.
Mm-hmm.
So get educated, learn your stuff, find a mentor, and go big. If you're going to get into this business, as hot as the market is right now, go big. And start big and go big and keep going big, because once you start and you get the momentum going, it's the same thing to do 10 or 50 units as it is to do 250 units. You got to do the same steps, the same due diligence, the same process, raise capital, and it's easier and cheaper to finance bigger deals than it is smaller ones.
It is. It is. I 100% agree. The only difference, and the toughest part about taking down a bigger deal is that you have to raise more capital. And if you don't have
Right.
access to a lot of capital, then that could be a little bit of a challenge. Everything else is the same, if not easier. So I agree with you. It's I back that. Go big or don't do it. Just go big.
Yeah. It's a good way
So
to start and get the momentum. And then, in the capital part, if you can only raise so much capital, then find somebody who's going big, like you are, and partner with them and
exactly.
and
Mhm.
get involved. So then at least now you're involved, and then you got the credibility. So you say, hey, I'm a partner in this, 300 unit deal. We're getting ready to do this 200 unit deal, and it'll get easier to raise the money,
Exactly.
especially if you're just starting out.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Some really good points there. So, how do you best manage your time? You're doing all these different projects. You're all over the place. You're successful, obviously. How are you managing your time?
Yeah, so I'm very organized, and again, I'm a leader, delegator, manager. So I've got people doing their thing, and I just check in with them, right? So I'm just on the phone all day, every day. I ride around, check out projects. In fact, I'm heading to an inspection here in a few minutes on a property where an electrician is showing up to check the electrical on a building. So I'm over the big picture, and I've got assets in place and people in place that do the day to day, and I just help them, coach them, prop them up, back them up. I'm very organized, very detailed. I keep all my emails. I keep my calendar appointments. And it's just what I've always done, right? I'm used to having anywhere from 20 to 100 people that report to me pretty much on any given day, whether they're my clients, business partners, or employees, and in my companies. And I've always had a company pretty much my whole career that's had anywhere from 15 to 20 employees at any given time. When I had a chain of restaurants at one point, I mean, I had hundreds of employees. I'd owned 3 or 4 restaurants one time, and I had 20 or 30 managers, and then they hundreds of employees under them. So it's just how I'm wired. I'm just used to doing it, and I'm used to working through others and helping them get it done.
It's about the team. That's what it's about.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So you
And
leverage
I
your team.
prioritize. So the biggest thing is, I find professionals, I put them in the right position, and I let them do their thing. So I don't do somebody else's job. If I'm going to hire you as a professional, whatever your role is, general contractor, architect, engineer, office manager, I am not going to do your job. You know what I mean? I'm going to
Yeah.
expect you to do it, and I'm going to keep pouring on you until you cry, for help. I'm going to give
Yeah.
you more and more and more, and show you that that you can do things you never even knew you could do. So that's kind of how I'm wired.
Yeah. Stay in your lane. That's what I always like to say. Just stay in your lane. Um, okay. So where do you see yourself in your company in the next 5 years?
Well, it depends on how this opportunity zone project shakes out. This is kind of a new thing that I've kind of adjusted my focus here recently.
Hmm.
So it'll be interesting to see how this shakes out. I mean, I've received several phone calls and had several meetings over the last couple of months, with, serious capital looking for these projects. So my goal right now is 100% focused on deploying that capital. And I mean, it's, hundreds of millions of dollars out there looking for opportunities on investments. And I've got a lot of connections in the, equity fund world and hedge fund world. And that's where a lot of it's coming from. And, they're ready to get out of the market and put it into some hard assets. So It really depends on where that goes. I mean, I'd really like to develop about $100 million worth of product this year, and or own, 100 million worth of product this year. So I've recently, shifted my focus 100% to bigger assets and opportunity zone projects.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, some big goals there for sure. Okay, so last question. At the end of your life, how do you want to be remembered?
So, I want to impact as many lives as I can. I want to be remembered as the guy who did what he said he was going to do, that you could trust, that you could believe in, and that made a difference in your life. I mean, that's my kids, my wife, my family, the community, everybody I touch, everybody I do business with. At the end of the day, I want them to say, you know what, that guy changed my life. I'm glad I met Greg Dickerson.
Sweet. I like that. I like that answer. Okay. So where can Commit to Wealth Nation go to contact you and find out more about what you're doing? And if they want to get a hold of you, where can they go?
Yep. So my website is gregdickerson.com, and all my contact info is on there. My number is 434-326-3903. Feel free to reach out anytime. I'm always available, and it's gregdickerson.com, and would love to hear what you're doing and chat anytime.
Sounds like a plan. Okay. And so can you say that number one more time? You said 434?
Yeah, it's area code 434-326-3903. That is my direct mobile number, and feel free to call anytime, text, email, whatever.
All right, I'm gonna shoot some text, man. I'm gonna just shoot all these emojis. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, so awesome. So hey, I appreciate your time, Greg. I really do. You're obviously doing some great things out there. I hope you accomplished your 2019 goals and your future goals, and above all, I wish you continued success.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that, Juan, and same to you. And I've really enjoyed the time. I look forward to catching up again.
Sounds like a plan. Thank you very much.
Yeah.